Hello again, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Noble Father podcast. I am your host, Theophilus. Today is November the 18th of 2024. If you're joining us for the first time, this is a podcast about a dad, an imperfect dad, and just really sharing about my life experience, what are things going on in my life, in hopes that somebody out there could benefit from these conversations. Today's episode, I want to talk, and I'm going to share some stories about how I became a father myself. And that's not a lot of information that people have, and it's not something that gets shared about often. And I'd like to just peel back that layer and really get to relive some of those moments leading up to the birth of both my kids. A little bit update about my weekend or my week, I guess. Grit is something that has been very difficult to do and sustain in this Noble Father journey, right? This is more than just a podcast. This is a membership community. This is a mastermind. This is retreats. This is online meetups. And growing this community has been one of the most difficult things that I've had to do as of late. And the resistance that you feel, one feels in growing it, is something that weighs heavy in all different domains as well. So even being a father and trying to be as present and intentional as I can, I often find myself catching myself thinking about the work and the business. It's hard to relay that information and that value to those out there. Sales and marketing is definitely not my thing. And but you know what? I'm committed, and I'm not going to quit. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from on this journey. And as of late, it just feels like there's been a lot of resistance in facing me as I go to grow this community. This past weekend on Friday, one of the fathers of my community, Perry, came out, and we flew out from where he is, and we took part in a sleep out to raise awareness for homeless youth. And so we, packed our sleeping bags, tarps, dressed warm, as warm as we could, and for one night we slept out to raise funds. And so I'll include the link at the bottom if you are interested in supporting still. It's not too late. And I think currently they're sitting at $190,000 raised. They have a target of $325,000, I believe. And, very much would appreciate your help in supporting this great ministry. And so, Saturday rolled along, great sleep out. Saturday rolled around, and we kind of just took it easy because we're both kind of exhausted, and just spending time together is really what, being present is all about. My kids really enjoy it when Perry's in town, and he's got his own room at our house, and so I had to move a bunch of stuff around just to accommodate him. But it was a great visit, great time together. And then Sunday came along, right? Go to church together on Sunday, learn about spiritual gifts. And from there, we go to watch my daughter do gymnastics, which is something, I love doing. I love watching my daughter, do gymnastics, but at the same time, Perry wants to also take advantage and take it and go see what that's like. And then from there, we went to go do our cold dip, which we usually do on Sundays. So we went to a friend's place and, dipped in the pool. The pool's about 11 degrees Celsius, so it's still pretty cold. And hot tub, so you need contrast therapy going back and forth between. And great way to have community, right? Obviously these friends of mine who we cold dip together have been doing it for the past 4 years, and it's easy to overlook and think that take it for granted that you have a community to be able to do that with. And so after that little dip, it was a quick one. It was time to send Perry off. And so, went to the airport, dropped him off, and, said another goodbye, right? You just never know. Might be the last one. It's always good to be present and intentional with that. And, so he's going back to his life. And so, yeah. And then from there, I just, went to go try to get this Forerunner fixed as well. And part of being a present father, an intentional father, is to live your dreams now, not living them, later on. Being intentional about those things. And so recently had to make a purchase on a vehicle, and now we're presently working through it. And, learning to get getting grease under my fingernails is something that I grew up wanting to do. Some memories that I wanted with my dad, I never got. And so, gotta do it. Live with no regrets, really. And that was my week. That was my weekend. Very, very restful. And, always look forward to Mondays, because Mondays I get to talk about this, and I get to talk about the podcast and talk on the podcast. So, today, if you're listening to this on the audio channels, I highly recommend you tune into the video versions of these on YouTube. You can go find me over there at Noble Father Podcast, and you'll find my videos there. I highly recommend watching this one. I'm going to be sharing some pictures and some video, and it really just talking about how I became a dad. And I'll be careful, right? I got to be careful. My wife doesn't enjoy me sharing photos and stuff, and I've minimized that. So I think she's within earshot and she can hear that. So much as me telling you, it's very much telling her. And yeah, I just really like to relive those memories of that time. Because for my son, who was my firstborn, we were in China. And, if you've listened to this podcast and you know who I am, I'm very Canadian. I am very much a banana. I'm yellow on the inside, yellow on the outside, and white on the inside, really. And so, China was it was a very foreign place for me. It wasn't where I would call home when I first started going. And, so you can imagine having kids there was not something that I envisioned for myself. And so that was an adventure in itself for me. And I want to switch over. So yeah, here, I'll show some pictures of kind of the work that my wife and I were doing over there, right? These are all students that my wife and I ministered to. They were all students at a university for sports, like a sports university. And, some of these are all doctors. These are all doctors now, and they're in sports medicine or sports doctor in some way or another. This lady is Rhoda, and she was a volunteer from Canada. She was just like me, kind of green thumb, didn't know China, didn't know how to speak the language, just wanted to serve, came out, and she became like a mother to so many of us, and even these students here. Right, these guys are all from different parts of China, and they're coming together at the university to learn how to be doctors. And so, of course, my wife is in the back there. And so, yeah, this was a meal we cooked together, and it's really much. It was a ministry about contact work, right? Making friends with kids and earning the right to be heard. It was really the mindset of our ministry then, and it was a great time of our lives. Really getting to know these guys, personally, and be their friends. Like these guys are some of the closest that I knew. Back in the day. Now they're all doctors for the Chinese Olympic teams. They are either, one of them I know, this one in the yellow, he's doing broadcasting on TV, like sports broadcasting on TV. So these guys are major hitters in the medical industry in China, especially when it comes to sport. And so yeah, that was the work that we were doing at the time. Right. And this is also another one of those things. We're doing English Corner, right? Using games to bring kids together, right? That's my wife right here. And again, these students, this is the university, and you can see the English is on the wall on this whiteboard. And yeah, it's really just, being in their community and serving them how they want to be served. One of the major things that I did doing the ministry was a lot of them would want English names. And so, help them figure out what would be a good English name, what would be a good fit. And as I'm looking back on these pictures, great times, in my early adulthood. I was 31 years old, 30 years old in these pictures, 29 years old, when I was, doing ministry there. And so, yeah, this is also, right, doing camps, right, with men and boys, young men from the university. Most of these are from sports, the sports university, and that was the school that my wife and I were in charge of. So yeah, with the journey came discovery that we were expecting. My wife and I had gotten married, and in 2014 in March, and it was amazing. Didn't expect to get married in China either, right? But yeah, this is one of the first ultrasounds we had, and like just amazing to know that you're expecting, right? It was a dream of mine to be a father, and specifically I said to be a present father, and so that kind of impacted everything. Yeah, this is my wife and I, on one of our dates, before we had our kids, and really enjoying before the kids definitely arrived. This is my son, right? A more 3D ultrasound picture of him. I mean, at this point, we were kind of really excited to meet him and to have him in our lives, and it was fulfilling a dream for myself. At the time, my wife, she was very critical of herself and said that she would not be a good mother or whatever, and I didn't see that. I had a feeling, and I just spoke that over her. I was like, you have no idea, I think that you're going to be a great mother, and I was right. So and during that time, because she was pregnant, she no longer served on the team, and kind of took a little bit of backseat. She had a really rough pregnancy early on with both our kids, just with like morning sickness and what have you. And so I continued working in the ministry, doing camps, preparing camps, doing the contact work, etc. And even during that time, my wife and I took part in like childbirthing classes and parenting classes and pre-baby classes, and so you're like learning about everything involved with having a baby. There was another team that was out there that was doing work in births, like midwife kind of ministry, and so we got in touch with them, and we took part in one of their classes to learn about having kids and what to do after you have kids. So we had a birth plan and everything, and we were excited. We were excited to become parents. I have a bunch of photos that I had to skip over, but we were at a private hospital. And in China, it's because there's so many people, the sheer density of people, and the cities that we were in, the public hospitals are just overcrowded. Just a lot of people having babies, and it was very common for there not to be enough beds, not enough doctors, what have you. The hospital that's in our city, the city that my wife is from, it's a huge hospital, big, and everybody wants to have their kids there. And so it's very common to have mothers go there and have a birth in the hallway, because there just wasn't enough beds, enough rooms, what have you. And so, we were very fortunate to, be at a private hospital and have our own room, have our own caretaker. It was peace of mind, right? At the time, my wife was not a permanent resident yet. And so if we decided to have my kid in Canada, it would have costed us a lot of money. I forgot how much it was. But at a fraction of the cost, we were able to do it at a private hospital and really get top-notch care for us. So that day, I recall, actually I have the photos here. I need to dig them up. Yeah, so here, this picture here is me packing up all our stuff, right? We had a midnight. My wife was starting to have contractions, and you can see it's still light outside. And it was go time, right? You pack up your go bag, you pack up everything that you need, and you hope for the best, right? And so let's see if there's a picture of that. Yeah, so here he is when he was born.
Cry, come on, cry, little guy.
It was dark and cold. And this is little Davian. And so, such as having a kid in China, you want to be extra vigilant, and I think you do that anywhere. It doesn't matter where you're from. Is that you extra vigilant, and would never, I didn't allow him to get out of my sight. Just kept my eyes on him. You hear all the horror stories of kids disappearing or being swapped or whatever it is, and yeah, I was vigilant. I wanted to be careful. I didn't want to, this is, you value what you just brought into this world, and you'd fight, right, like hell to make sure he's okay. And so even when the doctors and nurses would come and take him to go do their little procedures and give him baths and whatnot at the hospital, you just don't take your eyes off of him. And that definitely was the case for us. So yeah, it's born to our own room, and just you really saw God's provision for us and really taking care of us and providing for us in a way that we couldn't orchestrate for ourselves. And so obviously there's time for silliness, right? I don't think I was actually asleep in this. My wife took a picture of me and just trying to manage through the first month or so together. And in China they have this thing where they, for 42 days, I think the mother stays in and she's encouraged to rest and be taken care of and be pampered. And it's tricky for us, from Western culture coming in. It wasn't something that I was used to, and that caused a lot of drama and unnecessary drama, honestly. I was just really uptight about it, and I wish I'd done things differently. But so just growing, pretend, being a dad, right? Like, what do you do? Go to sleep and just take care of your kid as best as you can. So this is me and my son. You see a very vulnerable picture. And yeah, this is my son with his great grandmother, my wife's grandmother, and it was amazing to have the child in China. This wouldn't have happened if we weren't living there. And she was too old then to travel then, so she would not have been able to see Davian, until much later. So, how did we come upon the name Davian? When at the time I knew that, we chose a favorite letter. We both liked the letter D. And because the pregnancy early on was very, very difficult and challenging, with the morning sickness and just, it was like a rumbling in her stomach. And I made the joke that there's a little dragon inside of her belly. And so, the letter D and dragon was kind of the theme, before Davian was here. Obviously we already chose our name. When we found out the gender, we were set on it. There's a game back then that I used to play called Dota, and there was a hero in there called Dragon Knight. And in the lore, his name is Davian, which is the name I selected. I think at that time my wife didn't really know that was from the video game. And so now when people ask me, hey, how'd you guys come up with that name for Davian? She kind of rolls her eyes and, gets a chuckle, right? Because it's it's from a video game, and kind of pulled a fast one on my wife. But so then now his name's Davian, and we love it. Obviously, it's a unique name. He loves it as well. And so here's a picture of me being tired, taking care of my son, and yeah, he's come a long way. A big kid. So yeah, that's Davian right there. And so for Ellie, this is Davian again. He's almost 3 years of age in this picture. And so I'm trying my best to, entertain him. You can notice that I still have my hair back then. And so at this point, I'm probably 32 years of age. And still being a present father. I think at the time I was in carpentry or something. And it was something that I wasn't able to be as present as I would have liked. And so I had to change and get out of it. And ultimately I did. And so, we had our parents, Echo's parents, fly in from China to be with us for those first few weeks with Ellie. So they came in to assist us, and really wouldn't have been able to do it without their help. So we had a great support network. And, it was different this time around, right? Because we had Ellie here in Canada, in Maple Ridge. And she is, everything was different about this one, right? We had a birth plan for Echo's first, for Davian. And that birth plan went out the window. I forgot to say that, right? They did an episiotomy, which means they, cut the opening to free the baby. It was natural birth, right? And so that was not in our birth plan. There's a bunch of things that, was kind of different about that. And it was really scary. It was a very scary experience for me. In China, I had to pay to be in there as well. And that was just not what I was used to. I was not happy about that. But, I paid it. I wanted to be in there. I wanted to support my wife in there. I couldn't imagine her being in there by herself in the cold, on this metal table or whatever it was, to deliver this kid by herself without me there. And, man, it was a very raw, visceral experience. And then when Ellie came around, it was a completely different experience, My wife did the first time without an epidural. She did all natural. She didn't want to hurt the kid. She didn't want to, she didn't want any side effects with that stuff. So we went without it. And it was a difficult thing for her. The second time around, she chose to have the epidural and was self-administering. And even, during the birth of Ellie, Echo made the remarks of, I could see us having more kids. And, I was done already. I was like, no, two's already good, so, Ellie came without a hitch, no, nothing, natural birth again. They didn't cut, and, healthy baby girl. And, we originally wanted another boy, but, God had other plans, and we were also very happy to have Ellie. She was such a little bundle, and just looking back on this, she was just so lovely, and very different from her brother. Her brother was cried a lot, and Ellie was just completely different. You can see she's very chill. She's still like that now. Right, not a peep.
Really different from David.
Was he a cry? Still a cry?
And so this is me holding her, and my hair, obviously. Different experience again. I mean, we weren't in a private room, but Western hospitals are very different than Chinese hospitals, and we had a bed. I think there was like 2 beds per room, and there was nobody next to us. And so we really had the space again to ourselves. And so, David adjusting to having a sister. She's talking about her hand in Chinese.
No, 的手呢?
You hear my broken Chinese too.
你要不要躺在妹妹的旁边，然后看你多大，比她大。
很大。
It's kind of hard to listen to myself speak Chinese.
Lying down next to her. Come on. See how tall you are. See how big you are compared to your sister.
You can see his attitude too. I try to grab him and he's like pulls away from me. So learn how to raise 2 kids. Suddenly you're man-to-man coverage. But it was also really good to have Davian and his support for his sister. And it really took me back to being a big brother, right? I was the oldest in my family, and I took care of my siblings, about as best as I could. And was naive to say that was transferable information, but it wasn't. It didn't translate. I thought, that would help. I mean, some of it helped, others didn't. And but I did the best that we can. Echo and I did the best we can. And so stuff like checking hearing and jaundice and all that stuff, it's just part of the journey. And so had a healthy baby girl, and like when you look back on the journey, you definitely think how far you've come, and you see how much you've actually grown. I can't begin to tell you what the kind of man that I was then. I hadn't created Noble Father yet, but I was on the road picking up the skills along the way to do that, to be that. I had already started my business, but not into Noble Father just yet. And so, like if you're listening to this and you're a father, I'd encourage you to go back and look at your photos and really relive those moments, relive those memories of what it was like before you became a father, just to see how far you've come, and to really appreciate yourself, and to really celebrate who you've become. Yeah, because gift of life is something that not all people have, and we are fortunate. We are fortunate to be able to create our own, and it's not something to take lightly. And so, I hope it motivates you, and I hope it moves you to really look back on it, and to really even think about for yourself, when you were a baby, right? Just think about all the stuff your parents went through, or even for your parents when they were young, of what they went through. It changes every single generation. And so, appreciate. Hopefully it moves you also to find forgiveness in your heart for your parents if you have a difficult relationship with them, or one with your children, right? Is that those conflicts and those things that come between us are not important in the grand scheme of things, and that you would move to forgive one another and really extend that olive branch to them. So yeah, thank you for joining me for this episode. I hope you got to know me a little bit better through this episode, understand who I am as a person now, as a result of these stories. And if you have any questions, or if you want to join my membership community with the fathers and the meetups every single week, we hold space for dads every week on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Share that with dads because there's really not a lot of spaces for us men or fathers really to openly talk about life struggles and be received, without any of those toxic masculinity things of like, oh, you need to man up and, not be a pussy and not cry or not share your feelings. It's a pure space. And if you're into retreats and meeting fathers in person, definitely check us out. I include the link down in the description as well. And just remember, right, we're not promised tomorrow. And so you got to stay present and be intentional, and also stay noble. And so thank you for joining me for this episode. Until next week. Bye for now.